Yo, guys, how's it going? Welcome back.
What is
Shop
what
Talk,
up? What up?
episode 2.
What is
What
up?
it
Turn me
do?
up.
What it do?
What is up?
Yo, what's going on?
Episode
Hey,
2.
we got something in store for everybody today. What we got in
sir.
store for them?
We got my boy Jacob's testimony today. He's on the hot seat.
Uh-oh.
He's on the hot seat today, boy.
I don't know if I'm ready
That's
for
right.
this.
You ready, dog? Or
I
what?
don't know, dog.
You ready?
go.
It's a
You
little-
getting nervous?
It's a little nervous.
Yeah.
Nah, let's
I'm a
go.
little nervous.
That's right.
A little nerve-wracking.
That's what we have for you today. It's going to be good. So get ready, right?
Let's
Should we
go.
tell them grab some snacks and get ready to hear this amazing
Yeah,
testimony?
you guys gotta
That's
go
Right?
start.
It's going to blow their socks
Get a
off.
blanket, get some
That's
snacks
right.
I
going.
only gotta say, don't judge me. Don't judge me after this. I'm saved right now. The Lord saved me, dog.
This is
Don't judge my
disclaimer.
testimony, man.
Disclaimer.
Yeah,
What?
Let's go.
It's a little crazy,
Turn
but
me up.
sure, for
so,
sure.
Yeah, man.
when you guys want to get into it?
let's get into
Let's
it.
get into it.
I think we should start.
Where we gonna
I think
start?
with your childhood first, bro.
Childhood.
From the beginning.
From
Let's
the
do it. Do it from the
beginning.
beginning.
In the beginning.
Let them know from the
From the
beginning.
womb.
From
From
the
Genesis.
From the
Shit,
womb.
you remember that far, though?
And I don't. The hardest thing for me is to remember my childhood.
Yeah.
I think that's the hardest thing. But once I remember the other day, I forgot. I think I was talking to Oscar, the homie Oscar. He's one of my barbers. Shout out to him. But I was talking to him about my childhood, and we started talking about it. And I said, "Dang, now I'm starting to remember." Oh no, it wasn't Oscar. It was. What was it? Oh, it was actually another guy from my childhood. That he's one of my customers. We went to the same elementary school. It wasn't Oscar, but still shout out to Oscar. We love that dude. But yeah, it was actually one of my customers that I cut up, and we started talking. He was like, "Hey, you know so and so? He went to your school or to your elementary." And I was like, "Oh yeah, kind of." I was like, "I'm horrible with names, but if I see him, maybe." But we started talking about certain childhood memories, and I was like, "No way!" So it started coming back to me. So I think as I talk about it, it'll come back to me.
Right
But
on.
yeah. So was born. I was actually born in Amarillo, Texas. I wasn't born here in Southern California. I was actually born in Amarillo, Texas, and my mom's from Amarillo, and my dad's from here, and I could talk about their story. I don't know if I should. I could talk about how they met but they met in actually at a youth convention in Orlando, Florida, and well they've known each other for a while before that, but they finally kind of like linked up when they went to Orlando. They were older.
Right.
And so they ended up, like getting together, and then my sister was born, and then then I came into being, and
then you were bored.
I was born. I came into being, and then they moved. My dad moved my mom out here to California, to L.A., and so all I know is L.A. All I know is this Southern California, the sunny Southern California. This is all I know. We've been back and forth to Texas, and I have family out there. My aunts and my grandparents are out there. Shout out to my grandparents. I love them very much. But yeah, my grandparents out there, so we'll go out there, surprise them sometimes. But yeah, so growing up.
Do you have any memories like back there, like that you remember from?
Yeah, I have a couple. I have a funny memory of going back to
What
Amarillo when
is it?
I wasn't a kid, but I was. I guess I was like a little guy.
Like a teenager.
I was probably like 10 or 11, maybe.
Yeah.
I remember we went to Amarillo. I forgot. I don't remember what it was for. Maybe it was for. I don't know. I don't remember. But we went to Amarillo, and my grandparents took me and we all went to this amusement park that they have out there. I forgot what it was called, but it's a famous amusement park in Amarillo, Texas. My mom and my uncle Anthony would probably know. But we went out there, and I think I had some chili cheese fries. I had some chili cheese fries. And one thing about me is I hate rides that make your stomach feel funky. Right? So, the drops and stuff like that. I hate that. But I had these chili cheese fries, and I knew if I go on this ride, I'm going to throw up.
You already knew it before.
And so I was like waiting, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to wait. But everybody's like, let's go on the ride. So I was like, all right. It was the the boat rides that swing back and forth.
Oh
like
yeah,
this?
yeah, the
yeah,
carnival
those.
ones.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So everybody was like, let's go on. All right. So I felt like everything settled, right? I felt everything settled. So I was like, all right, let's go on the ride. So we get on the ride and it's going boom. And every time it gets to the up and my back is like to the up
You
position,
feel it in your stomach.
I feel it in my stomach. And we go down and I'm like, and I remember distinctly. I remember screaming, or no, this was after, but I remember we were going on the ride and I felt like I was gonna throw up and I was like, I'm gonna throw up all these damn chili cheese fries that I ate, dog. And so one passel, we go like this, boom, and I go. And I start throwing up, and we go like this, boom. So it comes back to me. It comes back to me. And
That's gotta be crazy,
and
bro.
I'm screaming outside the side, stop the ride! Stop the ride! And I'm freaking. And they took me off I got off the ride, and these fools grabbed a hose and just started spraying me down with the hose, dog. Yeah, that was one memory that I'll never forget from there. But yeah, man. My childhood, man, it was, it was a normal childhood. I had both my parents. My mom and dad, they always supported and cared for us. And, growing up, I grew up here in Torrance, California, off of 220th Street, in the east side of Torrance, I guess you want to say.
Right
and, growing up, we grew up in this, we used to call it's called the cabin house. Now it's remodeled. People bought it and they remodeled it, but it used to be like these wood planks on the outside of the house, and we used to call it the cabin house because it looked like a cabin. And so I grew up there. Had friends around that block. Played outside. This was before any type of phones or iPads or anything like that. This was way before. And so we grew up playing outside. We grew up playing on Nintendo 64 and PlayStation. And I had a normal childhood. Once I got to, I guess, I would say I remember distinctly everything from I remember my elementary age, a little bit of that, but then I remember everything from middle school on mostly. So I went to a middle school in Carson. After I went to elementary, we moved to Carson. I went to middle school for 6th and half of 7th grade year, and then we moved again. We moved a lot. We moved again to North Torrance this time, and so that's when I went to Cashmere Middle School, in North Torrance, and then from there, obviously North Torrance, and that's where Vic went as well. But yeah, going there, and then from there going to Sherry Continuation School, and we moved even in that.
So let's take a pause real quick. So
I'm just trying to give them the breakdown of
you're
my move.
Right now you're in what age area?
So middle school, right? My sixth and 7th grade year, right? I'm what, 11, 12?
Yeah, 12, 11.
11.
Yeah.
So 6th,
11, 12,
half of 7th
13.
grade year.
Yeah.
So I went to Carson, to Carroldale Middle School. It was an elementary and middle school, but I went there for middle school, and so I met people there. So then I went to Cashmere the rest of my 7th grade year, and then 8th grade year, and that's where I met the friends that I had back then.
Right.
And so yeah, I was I went there and I made friends, and I literally lived across the street from the school. So everybody would go to my house because my parents would be at work, and we would be in the backyard, or we'll be just chilling. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'd be having girls over, the homies. That's how we used to do it.
That's right.
And so yeah. So I did that little thing, and I've always been the thing about me is I always was in church. I grew up in church. So we always were at Wednesday services, Sunday services at church every week. And so, I always had the thing in me that, I'm a Christian, so I can't do anything bad, right? Because I'm a Christian. And so, I grew up on that. But so when I made friends, they knew that I was a Christian, and I would invite them to church. At that time, my parents were youth pastors, so they were youth pastors at my grandparents' church, which is now their church, but Fuente de Vida was the name my parents were. So I would invite my friends to church, and they would go just because they were my homies. But I've always been like, man, I gotta be careful what I do because I don't want to get in trouble, or I don't want to, that's
makes sense.
The Bible says, instruct a child in the ways of the Lord, and he'll never depart from it, right?
Yes.
So that has always been in me because I grew up in church. My grandparents were pastors. My parents are now pastors, but, just growing up in the lifestyle of a Christian, right? And so, I made these friends, whatever. And I still was a kid, My parents weren't super strict. At one point, there was no Halloween, right? So they had that thing where no Halloween, that's the devil's birthday, they used to say. And so, once I got to like middle school, it was like my parents were like, man, we can't force our kids not to do something when everybody else is doing it. And it's not to say, right, that they're saying it's okay or whatever, because I don't want people to judge them for how they raised us, right? Because, I think I turned out pretty well, but they allowed us to kind of go out with our friends on Halloween night and hang out, but they always kept me like, hey, be safe, and so when I got to high school, that's when the rebellious me came out, dog. So it was about like 14 years old, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So I got to high school, and as a young man, hanging out with my friends and wanting, we talk about girls and this and that, right?
The testosterone starts flowing, dog.
Come on, man. That's like that's the mid, like that's the start of it, bro. But yeah, start talking to girls, and things started going. But the funniest thing, bro, is every time, I'm gonna be straight up, I'm gonna be real on this podcast.
Be real,
right?
be real, come on, man.
Every time I would get to the point where I would, was about to be with a girl, right? Something all in the back of my mind always like kind of freaked me out, and always was like, she could get pregnant, and so I would. Hey, it's funny, bro. But I believe it was the Holy Spirit, dog. I believe it was the Holy Spirit.
Hey, right, yeah.
Right?
It could be.
And so there was
be.
always that thing in the back of my mind. So right, like at points when I'm like about to be with a girl, like I would literally like jump off, like leave, or like just run away, honestly.
Right.
Because I was like, man, like something, I was always scared. I was always like in fear of something happening worse, right? And so I believe that was the Holy Spirit keeping me safe, or from doing something wrong. But man, in high school I was nuts, man. I never talked to girls from my personal school, but I would always talk to girls from schools around. But so whatever. So in high school that happened. Right, in 9th grade, 10th grade, I started dabbling with drugs, man. And I started dabbling with, at that time, ecstasy was big. Right? So this was about 2010. 2010 going into 2011, I started dabbling with that stuff, messing with it. I had friends, that mess with that stuff, but I believe that none of it is anybody else's fault. We make the choice what we want to do, right?
Absolutely.
I believe that there's influence, but at the end of the day, we make the choice, right?
Sure.
And so I started dabbling in ecstasy. I'm gonna be straight up, in drugs, and it kind of led me to a dark place, and I got to the point where almost every weekend I was doing ecstasy, and I had people from school that I was buying from, and once 10th grade, end of my 10th grade year, going into 11th grade, I had to go to continuation school, so I ended up going to Sherry continuation school in Torrance because, bro, I literally did nothing at school. I think I could have had probably perfect attendance at school, but I never did no work, bro. Like I was just, I don't want to say, because I don't think any kid is dumb, right?
Right.
I don't believe that any kid is dumb. I believe that sometimes we're just lazy, and I believe I was
Right.
one of them kids that was just, I was just a lazy kid. I never wanted to do work. I never wanted to do homework. I never wanted to participate, right?
Right.
And so, you know, I started slacking off, man. I started slacking off and still going to church, man. I was playing the drums, you know, and I was literally doing ecstasy and going up on the altar and playing the drums, bro. Like this was my life at this time.
Nuts, bro.
You know, like 14, 15, 16 years old, I was doing this and smoking weed, man. You know, I never really drank. I just didn't like it.
Right.
So I literally was doing this for like 3-4 years.
Quick
you know?
question on this. It just popped in my head. When you were doing your thing, did you ever feel convicted?
It's hard to say, man, because I was feeling so good that I don't even. We would have okay. So
You're
this
just
was
all
this
feeling
was our
good.
week, right? We had a Sunday service, right? We had it's called Escuela Dominical or whatever.
Like Bible study.
Yeah, so we had a Sunday service 10 a.m. I believe, and then we had a 6 p.m. service on Sundays, and then Monday, Tuesday we just did, you know, regular weekdays. Then Wednesday we had a 7 p.m. service, and then Thursday nothing, and then Friday we had another service, but that was where the youth break off from the older people, and my dad and my mom would take the youth. So Fridays would be my party day. So I wasn't doing it like Sundays and
okay.
Wednesdays, right? I only messed with stuff on the weekend.
Okay.
And so Fridays, you know, my homies would come with me to church and we would freaking get this stuff and go to the restroom, bro. I'm being honest. My parents know this, so I ain't about to get in trouble.
Let's
My
go.
parents know I think they know most of my story, but yeah, man, we used to get that stuff, crush it up, snort it in the restroom,
Straight to the brain.
so it
Let's
hits us
go.
faster.
Just start hitting them drums.
And
Did
I'll
it
go
make
up
you play better,
and
dog,
play
or
the
what?
drums. I don't even remember, dog.
Gucci, all fall off.
Please, dude.
all
But,
good.
so I would go up and play the drums, and then we would go to class, bro. And I would be in class full, like on a sick one,
Yeah.
like my eyes like big. Me and my homies, and you know. So one day I'm gonna talk about the day that I got caught up with my parents.
And how old are you at this time?
So right now I'm about 16, I would say.
Okay.
Okay.
16, maybe turning 17.
Uh-huh.
Right? And so I believe I'm a senior, or I might be
Not like a junior, maybe.
I might be a junior.
Okay.
But a junior in high school. But so I'm messing around with this stuff, right? So it was a Sunday. This was a Sunday. I remember this because people reminded me of it. But it was a Sunday, and I had a couple friends, you know, that we were all dabbling in this stuff. And we decided to go to Disneyland. And I don't even know how I got the tickets. I don't know how we paid for it. I don't know. I don't remember most of the day. I remember portions of the day. But I remember we were going to Disneyland, and we take these, I don't even know what the heck. We get there, right? We get to Disneyland. We go to the restrooms. We go to California Adventure. And right when you walk into California Adventure, to the right, there's kind of like these restrooms. There's these restrooms. So we go into the restrooms. We go into the stall. And my homie passes me this little tab, I guess. It's almost like. And I'm thinking we're going to take ecstasy. And so I'm like, what is this? And he's like, this is new. This is new. Like new ecstasy. Just take it. And so I think I take about one whole one. And I remember another homie took half, and then that fool took half. And then we had another homie that was younger than us that we were like, hey, we're not gonna give you any, but
Still looking out for
just watch us, take care of us. Right? It's dumb. Us dumb. You know? We're thinking we're protecting this kid, but we're doing
All the
dumb
way
stuff.
around.
Right? So actually his mom took us to Disneyland, right? Because we didn't drive. So I think I'm like 16 at this time, honestly. I think I'm 16. So we go to Disneyland, California Adventure, and so we're walking around Disneyland, right? I don't remember this, but I remember like portions. So I remember we get to, it's called the Pixar Pier.
Right.
So it's the little pier that goes to like where now it's the Incredibles ride, but it was the Loop ride, the Mickey ride.
Yeah.
So we're going on the Loop, and I remember coming to consciousness, and I remember like kind of like swaying while I'm walking, and I'm like, what the heck? And then boom, I black out, and then I don't remember nothing until the next thing I remember. Boom, I wake up and we're sitting in the McDonald's across the street from the Disneyland, and everybody's eating, and I don't have nothing in front of me.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I look down and I'm like, why is everybody eating but I'm not? Like I'm tripping out, bro.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, what the heck? And so I'm like, what the heck is going on? And then I look at my homie and I'm like, where's my food? And then he's like, you ate it. And then boom, I black out again.
What?
I black out. Next thing I know, I remember, boom, I wake up and I'm pulling up in front of my house. This is when we lived on Kashmir. So this is how I know this was like when I was like 16, because we still lived in North Torrance. And so boom, we pull up to I was probably like 15 or 16. I don't remember honestly my age, but it had to be around there. But we pull up in front of my house, boom. And then I remember getting out of the car, going to my front door, and I look. We had like the door was like a wood door, and it had like this glass like middle part that you could kind of see out and in, but it was like kind of like you can't really see. You have to like really look.
Yeah, it's like frosted.
Kind
It's not blurry. It's just like
It's frosted.
no, it's not frosted.
No.
It's like double pane glass where it's like kind of has these edges and it's hard to kind of see in.
Oh yeah. I know
Right.
exactly what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
kind of like, but it's clear.
Right.
And so I remember, this is what I remember, all right? This is what I'm telling you, this was in my head. And so I remember seeing, because at that time my uncle lived with us, my Uncle Anthony, my mom's brother. I remember seeing him walk to the door to open it. I'm on the outside, and I believe that he was on the inside. So open the door, boom, go inside. And I don't remember what the heck I'm doing. I'm just probably walking around trying to see if anybody's there or something. I don't know. But I remember going to my sister's room. So we had rooms right next to each other. So I go to my sister's room and I turn on the light. You guys are laughing at this. I go to my sister's room and I see her Uggs. And her Uggs are literally like face up on her bed with like a blanket over them.
Yeah.
So my retarded butt is like, man, oh, nurse is here. That I said, my sister's here. Oh, shoot, you know?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, hey, and I'm talking to nobody, bro. I'm literally
You're just out.
like I'm so my uncle he passed away a couple months ago. My dad's brother. He used to be an artist. So he used to draw this nutty stuff. Like these weird buildings like shaped at like an angle, weird angle. And so my sister had a picture that he drew. So I'm tripping out on this picture. It had crazy colors. He was a real talented artist, but you know, it was just trippy stuff.
Right.
And so I was looking at this picture and I was saying, damn, this is crazy, huh? Like if I'm talking to my sister. And so I'm sitting there. Next thing you know, my mom walks to the room. And I guess she just gets there with my sister and one of her friends. And so she walks to the room and she looks at me and she said, who are you talking to? And I'm like, what? What do you mean? Like in my head, I'm talking normal.
Right, yeah.
And I'm like, my Narissa, like I'm talking to my sister. And she's like, how are you talking to her if she's right here with me? And I look and I'm like, oh, shoot. And my mom says, so my mom's side would be, okay, she comes in and she sees me talking to nobody, right? And she sees me looking at this picture. And so she's like, who you talking to? And she says that I keep like kind of like doing this weird thing like with my head, like trying not to look at her and that I'm stuttering. So in my mind, I was
crazy.
talking normal and I was acting normal.
Yeah, you're wrong.
Yeah.
But to her, she saw the
Right.
truth. What was
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
I get caught up right there.
Yeah.
And my mom is like tripping out on me and pissed off and she's like, what the heck? What did you take? What did you take? Asked me. And like, so some parts of this I don't remember, like, and so she like I remember her saying, I'm gonna take you to the hospital, and the first thing that came into my mind was, if she takes me to the hospital, they're gonna empty me out. It's gonna jack me up if they like flush my system.
Oh, okay, yeah.
They're gonna flush my system. That's the first thing that came to my mind, and I was like, heck no. So she ends up putting me in the truck. I think she had my dad's truck at the time, and she put me in the truck, and she drives me to my homie's house that we went to Disneyland with, and she gets out and she goes to the door, and I'm in the back seat, and I'm just looking out the window.
You're
like,
in the car?
Yes, I'm tripping out, bro.
Oh,
And she goes to the door, knocks on the door. This fool comes out, and he's normal, and I'm like, why isn't this fool tripping like I am right now? And so she's like yelling at his dad and him, and like, my son's this and that. What did you give him? What did you give him? They're like, nothing. We didn't give him nothing. And so we take off again, and we go to my other homie's house and it took us. His mom took us. And so me and one of that homie, we took the same amount. So I think we took like 1.5.
No.
Yeah. And so the fool the first house that my mom went to, he only took half.
Okay.
So he probably wasn't tripping as much as we were.
Right.
And so we pull up to my other homie's house, and the funniest thing, bro, is I remember looking in his doorway, and he had a screen. They had a screen door, and the door was open, but the lights inside are on. It's nighttime at this time, so the lights inside his house are on, so you can see. So all of a sudden, you see this fool just run across the doorway, and I'm like, what the heck? You just see him run across the doorway, and I remember they told me that he was running like outside, because he thought that the dog ran away. So he was like trying to chase to get the dog. So my mom goes there, and she's like asking the one that took care of us, like, what did they take? He's like, I don't know. I didn't take anything. Like, they just wanted me to take care of them, blah, blah, blah. Whatever the case was. I don't really know what happened in that conversation. My mom would be able to say that. But she was like pissed. And so she ended up taking me. We were driving back home, and she was like, your dad is going to be pissed. And I just remember, shoot, I already know this dude's going to probably want to punch me. And so we get home. I don't even remember getting home. We get home, and the next thing I remember was sitting on the couch in our living room, and my dad's yelling at me. And then, boom, I black out. Boom, don't remember nothing from there. And then I remember, so my mom, my uncle asked me, what did I take? And I told him ecstasy. So I told them that I took ecstasy because I didn't know what I took. And so I guess he knows some people from Amarillo that, he used to do sound systems. So he used to do sound systems for these crazy people. And so he knew some people. So he called, hey, my nephew took this. What do we do? And they were like, throw him in a cold shower. Throw him in a cold shower. Right. And so my uncle goes and he puts me in the shower, and in a cold shower, and I just remember that. And then I remember waking up the next day and being like, if I was hungover from like, I had the worst headache. I felt like crap. And, my dad was pissed at me. My mom was pissed at me. Like, they were not talking to me.
Yeah.
I felt like
you messed up.
I messed up big time. Right. And so, I'm going through this, right? And my dad's like, you're not playing the drums, bro. Like, you're not playing I played the drums. I grew up, my dad threw me on the drums. He's a musician, threw me on the drums, and I played the drums ever since. And so he was like, you're not playing the drums. And so he literally would play without me. So he played the keys and for worship at my grandparents' church, and I had to sit in the pews. And I think that's the biggest thing that hurt me, because I loved it. I love playing the drums.
Right.
And I believe that that's a gifting that God placed on me, right? And I played, and I loved it. I loved worshiping God that way, right? Now that I'm older, I understand things way deeper.
Right, absolutely.
But he sat me down, and that hurt me big time, man. Hurt me big time, and I was like, man, I messed up. But after a while of my healing process, I guess, I still like went back and smoked weed. I never messed with ecstasy again. I started smoking weed and drinking, right? And I would just drink like Four Locos. Me and the homie. Once I got a little older, I started going to the homie's house. I would spend the night there, and I would drink with that fool, and then and so that was my next like step, I guess, from I like no more hard drugs, ecstasy, if you want to say, and started smoking weed and drinking with the homie. But I at that, obviously, like I'm not gonna say fully right, so I just like I did my thing. But after I got caught, I always said, man, I thank God that I got caught. I thank kind of God that this happened, because if it would have never happened, where would I be?
Right.
So where would I still be on drugs? Would I still be doing, would I've got into something deeper, right?
Right, yeah.
Or harsher? I don't know, but I'm like, thank God that I got caught in that moment.
Yeah.
Thank God my mom walked in at that moment.
Yeah.
What if I would have went and laid down and went to sleep and woke up the next day feeling like crap, but they would have been like, oh, he's just tired from going to Disneyland. And I would have woke up the next day not being caught, to go and through my
do
the
definitely
same thing over and over again.
Right.
So I believe that God did that on purpose, right? I believe that he was like, I need to get this fool caught, because if not, I don't know where he's gonna end up.
Exposed.
Right. So go through that. So I once I'm getting a little older, start drinking and smoking a little bit, and then I get to a point where I'm like, okay, I'm done with this. I'm done with this stuff, and I stopped. I completely stopped.
And how old are you at this time?
So I want to say 18.
Okay. Yeah.
18,
Like about to finish
19.
high school
So
type?
18, 19, I was drinking and partying with my homie. Because I
Okay.
never really went to high school parties when I was in school, because I was Friday nights was always, I had to go to church.
Right.
So I never went to Friday night parties, Saturday night parties. I was, Friday night church. Saturday we did stuff with the youth. If my parents had the youth over, because we always had youth at our house every weekend. And I think that's why I was able to get away with it for so long, because we always had young people at our house. Even growing up as a child, I remember my parents, I couldn't say if they were the youth leaders at that time or not, but they had people around their age that would come to our house and spend the night and hang out. So I always grew up around older people.
Right.
Grew up around people that were in church, that served at church, played the drums. But obviously these people, were like in their 20s, 20s, early, maybe late teens, and I was a child. And so, I grew up around these people, and I remember those days, those names from my childhood. But so I always grew up with people inside of my house.
And how was that like, bro? Like having your parents be like a youth pastor and you were being the son. Like, did you feel any type of way any times?
So I think at that time, so my parents are youth. So my parents are only 20 years older than me. So my parents are young, right? They had me young.
Right.
And so, I'm 28. My parents are 48. I think my dad just turned 49.
40, yeah.
But April 12th, my dad turned 49. But, yeah, man. So they were young. So that's why I always had, from my childhood, had people inside of the house. And so once I got to a teen, they were youth pastors. So I had friends that were teens. And so we always had people spending the night at our house.
Yeah.
And so, I always had people. To me, it was fun. To me, at that moment, right, my mentality was, oh, my friends are here. We're going to play video games. We're going to stay up all night.
Yeah.
I remember a couple times, me and my friends from church, because I had friends at school, but then I had friends that I had at church.
Right.
And so sometimes my friends from school would come to church, but my friends from church were like a totally different group of people. Like, so, like my friends from church, if you would have saw me back then, they used to call them pretty boys, right? So I was like a pretty boy. But one of my best friends at that time was a skater kid with long curly hair,
And he's like going,
beanies.
the church guy.
Yeah,
He's at
so
church.
he was
not
he
at
was
school, but
right,
at
not
church.
at school.
Right.
So he was like a skater kid, and like skateboarded, and so like we were total opposites, but we became so close, and we became we became best friends.
Yeah.
And so, and then my homie, I'm gonna shout him out, Cisco. He came to church,
Mm-hmm.
and so me, Cisco, and my homie Julian would kick it. That was a skater. Cisco looked like a cholo. He was from Compton, and then I'm like a pretty boy. And so us three, random group, like but that was my homies from church, and so they were always coming over my house, and spending the night, and my mom would cook for us, and we always had a good time. I think that I didn't realize the damage that it was doing to me growing up, because now I'm literally sharing my father with all these other teens, right? All these other youth. And so my dad, his heart, both my parents, their heart has always been for kids without a father figure, a mother figure. Right. They always wanted to be that for them, because that was the heart that God gave them, I believe. They had love for these kids that came to church that didn't have a father to look up to, or a mother to look up to, and they took that role. And so I can't hate them for that. I can't be upset with them for that. I think that's a good thing, right? But I think that it also affected my growth, or my growing up, in a sense.
Like in a sense, like you just felt maybe like you deserve more, maybe? Like, what do you mean by
not that? I think that I think it was that I could have had my parents a little more. Right. You know what I'm saying? Right. Instead of like having the same amount as another kid. Right. Mm-hmm. So I had my parents, obviously I went home with them at night, and that's the normal, but I think that with the kids being there, we had youth there every week, literally every weekend.
Kind of like having like a bunch of brothers.
It was like we would have slumber parties every freaking week. So my sister would have her friends, so the girls would come over, and then I would have my homies come over. So we had a house full of like literally like 10, 11 people every weekend. And so, my parents, they just, that was their heart. And so, I think in a sense, that's why I am the way I am today. I always want to, if me and my wife will want to go on vacation or something, we're always like, well, let's invite so-and-so. Because we don't want to go alone. You know what I'm saying? Because I feel like I need somebody with me, because I need a group of people. And I think that's what made me that way, was always having people at my house, or always be going out with other young people, and my parents were the chaperones or took us. But I think it kind of like, I don't want to say it damaged me, right? Because I believe that my parents had good intentions for it, but I think that I could have had more of their attention. Right.
Yeah.
But I don't hate them for it. I love my parents to the fullest. I honor them, but I believe that, excuse me. I believe that, we got to cut that out. We got to cut that.
Sick bird.
But anyways, so I believe that, it kind of like molded me in a certain way.
Right.
But, after the whole drug thing, after drinking and smoking with my other homies, I ended up getting to the point where I think I was like 19 or 20, where my dad was like, you need to get a job, bro. Like I graduated high school, and I don't get me wrong, school's good, but school's not for me.
Right.
Like I can't do college. I can't do that stuff like that. I feel like there's people that didn't go to college that are making more money than people that did go to college.
For sure.
And so, college just wasn't for me. And my dad gave me the choice. He was like, you either go to college, I sign you up for Elko, or you get a job. And I was like, all right. So I started applying at different jobs. This was 18 or 19. But started applying at different jobs, like Zoomies, all these jobs at the mall.
Yeah.
And so I started applying, wasn't getting no callbacks. So I got desperate and I started saying, all right, if I can't get a job here, I need to get a job somewhere. So I started applying at freaking McDonald's, Burger King, Carl's Jr., Jack in the Box. I started it, and I was like, I never wanted to work in fast food.
Yeah.
So I was like dreading it. And I was like, I hope I don't get called back. So I started applying at these jobs, filling out the paper, whatever. And then not getting called back. They weren't calling me back, and I'm like, what the heck? What's going on? So my dad ends up finding me a job at the Shave Ice place in Gardena right here, right by the police station. It used to be right there.
Remember.
They closed down now, but there was a Shaved Ice place there. I went, applied. They called me back. I went to the first interview, I think, and then at that time my dad was working, doing kind of like a construction, kind of going to apartments and painting the insides of the apartments. So I would go with him and help him paint. Me and my other homie Julian from church, we would go with him and go paint, and we would be painting each other, messing around, but that's besides the point. But we would go and help him. So I remember we were in Long Beach at this apartment because my mom used to work for a property management company. So the job was that they had to bid. My dad and these other contractors would have to bid for these jobs. So you bid for a job, and the best price would get the job.
Yeah, right.
And so my mom would kind of hey, this guy bid this, so whatever. So my dad would bid for the job and say, this is how much I need to get. And so my dad would get the job. Sometimes other people would get the jobs, whatever. But I would go with him. The point of the story is I would go with him to do the jobs. And so I remember we were in Long Beach at this apartment, and we were painting, and I get a call. On my phone from the Shaved Ice place. And they're like, hey, we want you to come in. We want you to start. And I'm like, okay, let me talk to my dad. I'm in Long Beach right now. He needs to take me.
Yeah.
And so they're like, okay, just come in whatever time you want to come in. All right. And so I tell my dad, hey, they call me from the Shaved Ice place. They want me to go in. And he's like, but we're doing this. And I'm like, all right. I don't even show up, bro. I don't even show up. So whatever. So that happens. So then one day, my sister's ex-boyfriend, right? This is like a regular day. The funniest thing, bro, I'm gonna be straight up. When I would be at home, At this time, we lived right here, across the street from El Camino College. So we lived over here. And at this time, I would be home, right? I would wake up. I would always make myself chorizo and eggs, and then I would, grub and just be chilling at home, not doing nothing. Or I would go with my homies and go to the mall or something. But the funniest thing, bro, is every time I was home and I hear my dad coming home, I would clean up the house so quick because I didn't want him to tell me anything about this house is a mess and you're here all day and la la la. So I would always. The house was spotless every day, bro. Every day. Every day, putting pints on the floor and mopping, dog, straight up. And so I would always do that because I was like, my dad's going to piss because I don't have a job. I'm just at home. I'm just eating up their chorizo and eggs and all their tortillas. And so finally, my sister's ex-boyfriend, he calls me one day. And he's like, hey, I used to go to this barbershop in Carson. It's called MG. Shout out to MG's. That's where I started my barber career, my profession, my barber profession. So shout out to MG, man. If it wasn't for you, man, I wouldn't be where I'm at right now. But yeah, man. So my sister's ex-boyfriend calls me. He's like, hey, MG wants you to come work for him. He wants you to sweep hair. And I'm like, man. I'm like, fool, I'm 19 years old. What am I going to look like sweeping hair at a barbershop?
Right.
Like, I'm not a teenager. I was a teenager, but I was about to get into my, And so I was like, man, what am I going to look like being 19 and sweeping hair? And so he was like, man, just come do it. You need a job. I was like, man, all right, whatever. So low key, if it wasn't for Marcos, shout out to Marcos. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be at MG's or wouldn't have started there, right?
Yeah.
I go to the room and I tell my dad, hey, I think my dad and my mom were there. And I was like, hey, Marcos just called me and he said that MG wants me to go sweep hair and get paid like a job. And they're like, do it, man, do it. And I'm like, all right. So I ended up pulling up, and I thought he was just gonna be like, hey, I want you to come in this day and come sweep. I pull up and I'm like, hey, MG, what's up? And then he's like, you ready to start or what? And I'm like, yeah, I guess. So I freaking start sweeping hair right there, and I'm chilling. So I would be there Thursday, Friday, and Saturday sweeping hair, because during the week, obviously, it was a little slower. So they're like, all the barbers are here Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So you get paid from every barber those days. So I started sweeping there for about a year. Mm-hmm. So once I turned 20, then I started cutting people's hair slowly. My homies, my dad, they let me use them as guinea pigs. And
at this time, are there the guy MG? Is he like teaching you?
So MG, he was the owner, but I was learning from honestly everybody in the barbershop.
Okay.
So I was learning what to do and what not to do from certain people. Right. But I was there and I was just kicking it. I would just watch these dudes cut, and I was like, man, I could do this.
Yeah.
And so I end up cutting my dad's hair, and I'm jacking him up. I think I have a picture on my Instagram of me cutting his hair, like with the like a trash bag or something on. But cutting his hair, cutting my homie's hair, and I'm doing it, and then one day I cut one of the barbers from that barbershop, his son. I cut his son's hair, and MG saw it. He was like, "Hey, what's up? You want to cut hair? You want a chair?" And I'm like, I was making pretty, honestly, don't knock sweeper boys, man, because they make pretty good money, right? So I was making some pretty good bread. I had my car, I was fixing it up. JDM, I had a 95 Acura Integra. I was hooking it up. Had the long mirror.
Hey, sweeping hair, dog.
Sweeping hair, dog. And these dudes were shooting me $25-$30. Each barber, and there was like 9 barbers in there. And so I was making, that was one day, 9 times 30, and then times 3 days. So I was making good money as a sweeper boy. People don't realize how much a sweeper boy could make, but. I was doing that. Then he was like, hey, what's up? I see you cutting hair. You want a chair? And I'm like, I'm good sweeping hair. He was like, nah, either you hop in a chair or you got to go because I found another sweeper boy. And I was like, dang, man. And so I was like, all right, I'll do it. And so I ended up starting to cut hair right there with them every single day, Monday through Saturday. Sundays was my only days off because that's church day. And so I started cutting hair, and it was rough for me in the beginning because everybody that would come in, they would be like, hey, go to him. Nah, that's the sweeper boy. I ain't getting my hair with him. And so it was rough, man, in the beginning. People didn't want to get their haircut with me because I was a sweeper boy before. But I didn't let it knock me. I didn't let that phase me, and I didn't quit. I kept going and doing it. Towards the end of my time at that barbershop, I was pretty booked up. We were charging like $14 a haircut at that time. I was like 20 years old. So I was like 20 years old. I think I was there for a year. I was 19, so I was like 19 or 20. So 2012 I graduated. 13, 14, 15. I think I was there for a year and a half maybe. And then everybody started leaving the barbershop, and things started happening. But everybody started leaving that barbershop, so I was like, I'm gonna go too then, I guess. But I had nowhere to go, so my plan was honestly to stay there. But then I got a call from one of my boys, and he's like, hey, it's the owner of my old shop, Andrew. Shout out to Andrew, man. Love you, man. If you were never there for me, man, I wouldn't be where I'm at today either. So I think a lot of people
everything lined up.
Set up things in places that, you get to where you're at. Yeah. And so this dude, Andrew, he sent some pictures of my haircuts, but he didn't send them just my haircuts. He sent some pictures of another barber's haircuts that were like fresh. So he was like,
shout out to Charlie.
Yeah, he sent some pictures of Charlie. And so he sent some pictures. He's like, yeah, man, this dude's good. Get him to come over here. He's like, is he licensed? And he was like, no, this dude's not licensed. I was cutting hair for like a year and a half, no license. And so I end up moving over there with Andrew, and this is in Old Town Torrance at OBL, Original Barber Lounge. Shout out to them. But I started there with Andrew, and I believe it was God ordained. At this time, I'm in church and I'm not messing around anymore. I'm not drinking. I'm not doing anything. I'm straight edge now. But there's other things that I'm dealing with, but I'm not doing these.
Right.
I'm not drinking. I'm not doing drugs. I'm not, anything like that. But I was still dealing with things at this time. But all in all, I go to this barbershop and he's like, yeah, man. And I knew it was when I knew it was God was, I met this dude and we talked and we were cool. We chopped it up. We became cool. And then the first day starting work, it was September 12th of 2015. That's when we opened OBL, or when he opened OBL, and I was his second right-hand man right there. And, this is the day I knew it was God, because his uncle comes in and they're like, all right, we're going to pray. And right there I knew, okay, this is God ordained.
Yeah.
Because this just doesn't happen where you come to a place and, they're believers as well.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, I start working there, and we start working, and within 5-6 months it starts blowing up. And then we hire another barber, then we hire another barber, and we have like 4 stations. Then we had to literally move all the stations to the farthest front so that we could add a 5th station, so we could add another barber. And so we had to do that, and then we had a pool table in the back, and then we were getting so busy that we had to sell the pool table, and then I think we added 2 stations back there, or 2 or 3. But I remember we added 2. I think we added 3. We added 3 more stations in the back, and then we had to add another one in the corner. So it was so popping at that bar, and that was all God, honestly. That was God. And Andrew likes to say that he has the blueprint, right? But it was God on top of that, So, it was just popping right there. And I'm working there, and God's blessing me, man. I'm making good money there. And so fast forward to I would say a couple months ago, about how long ago, like October, let's say
November 2022.
October of 2022,
right,
because that's when I'm still working there. But September, God. Okay, so I don't want to get. This is gonna be a long podcast, guys. Sorry, because I have a lot. So it gets to.
Sorry, dog. This is you.
So it gets to the point where, so at this time I'm 26. No, so at the time that I start there is 2015. So I'm 2013. I'm 19, 14, 20, 21. I start there. September, turning 22. Right. I think I'm, because September, my birthday's in November. So 2 months later, I was turning 22. So about 22, 23, 24. I worked there for 7 years. So 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. Right, it's my 6th year there. Right, I'm kind of like, I'm in and off of, like, I guess my sin, if you want to say. I'm in church and I'm going to church, but I'm not fully like devoted at this time. And I'm with my wife at the time. So we're dating. So I started dating her at MG's. So whatever year that was, I don't even remember. It's hard. I should have wrote this all down. But I'm dating her while I'm at MG's. And then I moved to OBL, and I'm with her still at that time. So I'm with her all through that time. So I've been with my wife for about 8 years before we got married, or seven years, right? Was it? I'm trying to think. I don't want to mess this up. I'm with Stacy for since 20. Well, we've been talking since high school, honestly. Since like we were in high school, we were on and off talking, but I like legitly got with her when I was working at MG's, towards like the end of that. And so whatever. So I'm with her. So we're going, we have our relationship and we're going through that, and then, church. I'm going to church, but we're not really like involved. I play the drums, but I would just, once service was done, I'll bounce, boom. And my parents used to hate it. They used to say, "You need to show face at church. You need to show face, and because you're our son and blah blah blah." And I was just like, man. At that time, I was like, "Who gives a damn what anybody thinks?" At that time, I'm rebellious in the point where if somebody talks about me, I'm getting down with them because I had some anger issues, right? And so I'm going through that, whatever. And we're going to church, and I'm not doing anything. But then, I start dabbling in drinking. I start going to, I start going with certain people, and I start, drinking, and I'm getting lost in my my train of thought because I'm trying to think of all the years, but when I'm 28, I'm gonna just say this part of the story. I turned 28, right? And I'm 28, and at this time, I'm married to my wife already, right? Because we got married in 2019, August 23rd of 2019. So when I turned 28, we got married at 26 because I said, I'm not gonna wait. I need to get married at 26 and have my daughter, or 27. I don't remember what it was, but yeah, I was around that age. 20. I think we got married at 26. And I was like, I need to have my daughter at 27. I'm not gonna be an old dad. I didn't want to be an old dad. I literally wanted to have a kid at 20 because I was like, I want to be like my parents, young and fun. But obviously, I saved myself to my wife, and so I think that's an accomplishment for me. I saved myself to my wife, but when I turned 28, right? I'm 28 at this time. I'm kind of like drinking and stuff, and not taking God serious. And so I remember this is where my real testimony comes into play, where God kind of reveals himself to me. And it wasn't a tangible, it wasn't him speaking to me. It wasn't like a boom, like something crazy. It was just an awakening moment where I was like, wow, God, okay, you are real. And so I'm 28. My wife's, this is during COVID. So my wife's aunt, her dad's brother, she ends up getting COVID, and they're saying it's pretty bad, and so she ends up passing away. And so they've lived in Visalia, so we had to drive up north to Visalia where her dad kind of grew up. He's from South Central LA, but they moved to Visalia to get him away from the gang stuff. But they moved up there, and so that's where they're from. And so we have to go up there for her funeral. And so we go up there, and I'm just like, I'm not thinking about God. God is nowhere on my mind. And so we go up there, we get to the funeral or to the viewing, and we're there, and we're sitting there, and they have an open casket, and we go and say our goodbyes, whatever, and so we're there, and we go back to my wife's grandmother's house, and they're having food and stuff, and so we get there, and we're there, and one of the guys is like, hey, let's take a shot. All right, let's take a shot. Boom, boom. So I'm taking a shot, whatever, blah, blah. And so then the next thing my wife tells me, hey, my cousin's dad wants to speak to you. He goes to church and stuff. And I'm like, dude, I just took a shot, they're like, he knows you're a pastor's son, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. Like in my mind, I'm like, this is horrible because I'm a pastor's kid. This dude knows that I'm a pastor's kid, and he's like wants to talk to me because he's Christian. He's the only Christian there, right? And so, whatever. So the next day comes, and this day is the funeral. So we're at the funeral, and we're sitting there. And, everybody's just quiet. And my wife's sitting next to me. And she asked me, do you think my aunt went to heaven? And as harsh as this sounds, I told her, no. It sounds so jacked up, but I had to explain to her what our belief is. If you don't believe in Christ as your Savior, and turn,
Right. Yeah.
you don't believe in Him, then He's the way to heaven.
Like, even in that state of mind you're in, you still like...
Right, because I grew up in church, so right. I heard the lingo. I knew what being a Christian was. I knew that we had to believe in Christ as our Lord and Savior, Him dying on the cross, being buried and resurrecting. Mm-hmm. So I knew that was our core belief, was that if He died on the cross and He rose from the dead.
In the midst of even being in a state...
In my sin.
Yeah, in your sin, or in the state
not
you're
caring,
in,
Not caring about...
Not caring, right.
And so I told her, no, babe, like, I'm sorry. It's hard, but our belief, what we believe. And so they have a Catholic funeral, just saying. Like, their thing was a Catholic funeral because that's what her grandmother and grandfather wanted to do, right? So they had a Catholic funeral. So I'm like, I don't think so. And so she's like bummed out. I'm like, man, So anyways, fast forward. After the funeral, we go back to her grandmother's house. And in my mind, I'm like, I can't drink. Like, it's already starting.
Like, did it convict you?
It convicted me because I was like, damn, this dude knows I'm a pastor's kid and I'm over here taking a shot. He probably saw me. And so it convicted me. So I was like, I can't drink tonight. And other things were happening in that moment that, I was like, man, God's doing something in my life right now.
Yeah.
Because the owner of the barbershop hit me up and he's like, hey, let's go halves. There's a new spot. And it's bigger. We can fit about 15 chairs. Let's go halves on this barbershop, making it bigger. And I was like, oh God. At this time, I was like, God's gonna make me a millionaire.
Yeah.
Like my mind was just crazy. And so I was like, man, God's doing something. I kept telling my wife, I think God's doing something in our lives. Like He wants us to be successful.
Yeah.
And so, that's already boiling in my mind that God's doing something in my life. So I'm like, I can't drink. And then, so this is where it gets, for me, this is where God showed up, right? So it's getting towards the end of the night, and I'm sitting there, and I'm excited because this dude's texting me, and he's like sending me videos of the spot, and, we could, we'll go halves, and, we can make good money. I'm doing the numbers, and I'm like, no, like, oh my gosh, like I can make good money. And so it gets to the point of the end of the night where we're about to leave. So we get up. And we're kind of, they have a pool, so we're standing by the pool, and so my wife's cousin brings her dad, and he comes to. I'm standing with my wife, my mother-in-law, and my sister-in-law, and then her cousin and her dad, and we're standing there in a circle. Hey, what's up, bro? How you doing? What church do you go to? He's in blah blah blah. My name's so and so. I can't remember his name that they gave me, but. Yeah, he told me I'm so and so, and I became a Christian. And he tells me his testimony. I think, this is where testimonies are so important,
right?
Because he tells me his testimony, and that's what really
did it really like
impacted me.
Yeah,
and
really hit you hard.
So his testimony, he's like, hey, yeah, man, I started going to this church, and I'm I like it, but I kind of I'm looking for a different church. And I say, hey, you guys should check us out. Oh,
you said that to him.
Yeah, I told him, hey,
about our church. Like you said, hey, to him.
I said, hey, you should check us out on YouTube.
Yeah.
Or on Facebook, CWC Gardena. Check our church out, man. You just watch it because I know you're all the way in Visalia. This is in Gardena. Visalia is hour or two past Bakersfield.
Yeah.
So it's far. So I'm like, check us out on Facebook or YouTube. And so he's like, yeah. And he's like, and then his daughter says, I didn't even want to have a Catholic funeral for my mom because it was her mom.
Okay.
So she was like, I didn't even want to have a Catholic funeral for my mom. I want to have a Christian funeral. And he tells me, yeah, I started taking my daughter with me to church and stuff. And I'm like, wait. I didn't think there was any Christians here.
You said that.
No, in my mind, I'm saying, in my mind, I'm like, I didn't think there was any Christians here because I'm going up there and it's a Catholic funeral and all this stuff, and I'm thinking, God ain't here.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that's my mentality. And it might sound messed up, but this is just my story.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so,
yeah. It's your testimony.
And so,
Testify.
she tells me this, like, I didn't even want to have a Catholic funeral. I want to have a Christian funeral. Or she's telling us as in a group. And I'm like, what the heck? And then he goes on to tell me, yeah, I started taking my daughter to church with me. And we go every Sunday. And he's like, I'm serving in church. And he's like, kind of like zealous for God. Like on fire for God. And I'm like, what the heck? And so he starts telling me his testimony. He's like, yeah, man, I used to live in this neighborhood and do crazy stuff and blah blah blah. And he says, I guess his brother is like a preacher, and so he says, my brother invited me to this church, and he says that he's sitting in the church, and he's sitting there and he's sitting there like this, like he don't care.
Yeah.
And he says that I think they do an altar call and there's worship playing, and he just breaks down and goes to the front and he accepts Christ.
Wow.
And so he does that, right?
Yeah.
So this is, I think his testimony reminds me of the prodigal son, because he accepts Christ and he leaves, goes back to his old life. So he ends up going back to his old life. And I think I forgot where he said he worked, but he worked at, I believe, a Walmart.
Wow.
And he said he's working there and he's standing there and he's watching, I think he said he's watching a Laker game. And a lady, so this is already, a time has passed since he gave his life to Christ. Time has passed. So he's working and he kind of went back to his old life. And so he's working there and he says a little old lady walks in front of him and stands in front of him and is looking at him, and he steps out of the way because he's like, what the heck? And so she stands in front of him again and he says, can I help you? Because he works there. And she says, God told me to tell you to come back to him.
Wow.
And so I'm like, at this time I'm just like jaw dropped. I'm like, what the heck?
Wow. Yeah, yeah.
And so then he says, he goes to his brother and he says, who did you tell about me? Who did you tell about me? And his brother's like, I haven't told anybody about you. And so I'm like, what the heck? So then he says, whatever. He kind of like blows it off. Goes back to work again. And he says he's standing there, same spot. And he says, I believe this is how I remember it. So if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But this changed my life.
Change your life. Testify.
So I believe that he said that there was this guy walking, bald head, cholo looking dude, walking by. And he says, with his head down. And he says that the guy stops. And he turns to him. And he tells him, God said you need to get back to him.
Wow.
And he said, at that moment, I knew I couldn't run from God anymore.
What?
And I was like, my jaw was hitting the
crazy.
floor, bro.
Right.
And I'm like, what the heck? And then he starts to share with me when Stacy's aunt caught COVID, she called him. So they weren't together at the time, right? They just had kids together.
Yeah.
And weren't together. And so she texted him, I guess. This is how I remember the story. So if I got it wrong, I got it wrong. But this changed my life still. So I guess she texted him, hey, I got COVID. I need you to take me to the hospital or take me to the doctor. So he's like, all right. So he goes and he picks her up. And she's wearing a mask, he says. And he's wearing a mask. And she's like bringing down her mask and coughing all crazy. And he tells me, I was like, by the blood of Jesus, cover me, blood of Jesus, because I don't want to get sick. Right? And so he takes her to the hospital, whatever. And so he texts her like, Christ loves you, like, Jesus loves you, and you need to give your life to him.
Yeah.
And so, all this is passing, and then I believe on the day that she passed away, I believe that her daughter went in there and told her, you need to give your life to Christ, and I believe she did. And so at that moment, God told me, who are you to say that she's not with me? That's what I heard in my head.
Yeah.
Who are you to say that she's not with me? Ooh. At the last moment, she gave her life to me.
Wow.
And that impacted me so much that I said, nobody can tell me you're not real, God.
Yeah. Yeah, that was because that was the voice of God right there.
Because I'm in a place where I don't think you're at.
Right.
And you show up. And you say, you didn't think that you don't think she's with me, but she is with me because
not at church.
Right.
Not at church.
It was
turn me up.
And so it impacted me.
up.
That impacted me so much. On the drive home, I was talking my father-in-law's ear off, telling him, "You don't understand that God has purpose for all
fire
of it." Blah blah blah. The fire just boom consumed me, bro.
Filled you up.
And so we get back here, and that was Saturday. A Saturday that we drive back. Sunday I go to church, and I go up to the guitarist David, and I'm like, "You don't understand how all you and this so I'm telling you don't understand how powerful God is. All you got to do is submit yourself to Him. I'm on fire, bro. You just got to surrender your life to Him, like God." And I started sharing it, like, this is what God showed me.
Yeah,
this is that nobody could tell me He's not real. This is what God showed me. So fast forward, then you decide to come get a haircut with me.
Yeah,
randomly, randomly, right?
Random haircut.
I hadn't cut his hair in a while.
Yeah.
Comes and gets a haircut with me, and he's sitting there, and we're talking during his whole haircut, and me and Vic are talking, and I'm telling him about the whole testimony of what God did in me, and then he's like, and then I start sharing with him all this stuff, and he's like, "Bruh, I'm going through kind of a similar thing."
Yeah.
And
because that was the time I was away from church.
Right.
And so me going to him, it was like...
It was God
it was
ordained.
right when I
right there,
exactly the same time where I was just like, all right, I'm done, God. And then he had his story, and it was just like...
It was, I'm done, God.
Yeah.
I'm done running. I'm done faking this. I'm done being a
Right.
fake Christian. I'm done. And so me and Vic got together, and this dude just kept burning my fire, bro. Like,
it was good, man.
and so we started talking, and I remember that day when I was cutting his hair. I cut his hair, and I think I took like an hour on his hair, and then we went outside, and we were talking
for like 3 hours, maybe.
Yeah, we were talking for another couple hours because we were like, I was like, I'm so on fire. And the craziest thing is, he told me, like, I've been praying for somebody that I needed to connect with, that was on the same level as me. Bro. And so that good, like that, he can go into his story about that, but I was like, man, and he didn't even think it was gonna be me. Yeah. At that time, he was like, he was praying for other people. Maybe this is
bro. You know what? It's because God gave me a word. You know that they said that God's gonna give you somebody who is on fire like you, and like, bro, if it wasn't the right moment, because me coming back, you know, and I'm like, okay, God, and this fool just like, let's go. It's not like I don't know this fool, like I know this fool too, you know, and it's just like boom, you know, like it was like combustion, bro, and it just sparked off. Like that's when even this, bro, like you can go back and you can say like, you know, it sparked that, you know.
So going on from there, me and Vic talking there, and we're like, okay, we need to do something with this. Right. So Vic starts coming back to church, and then my dad's like, I'm talking to my dad, and I didn't really tell my parents like my testimony because I told them, but I didn't see a reaction in them. So I was like, okay, they're like, is this real? I think that's what was going on.
Right.
Is this real? Because this could just be for the moment, right? And so I think once they saw that I was consistent, at this time, I'm living, you know, me and my wife are married. We have our daughter. Or no, we don't have our daughter, but we're living. Do we have our daughter? I don't even remember. But we're living we do have a daughter. We're living in Wilmington at these apartments. And so after that, I started reading my Bible, and I started praying, and I started getting intimate with God. And God is speaking to me like crazy, and we're sharing it. I'm sharing it with you, and you're sharing your. And so my dad's like, hey, what, you know, I told my dad, man, you know, I want to get some guys that are married, that you know, have kids, or that are just married. I want to get us together and have a community group for just men that are married, because they were having a men's community group, but it was younger guys. And I was like, man, we can't, like, it's too much of a gap, age difference, age gap, that we can't relate in a sense. Like, we go through something totally different than somebody that's single and 19, 20 years old they're going through, right? We're at a different stage. And so I tell my dad, he's like, all right, do it. And so I get a couple guys, me, Vic, And actually, even before that, me and Vic and shout out to Lewis, we started getting together and going to Panera Bread.
Yeah,
and
bro, that just came back to my mind right now. You're right, bro.
And we started.
Right,
we would
bro.
be reading the word.
Yeah.
And we would be praying, and we'll go to Lewis's house, and we'd be right there, and that's where I got delivered.
Yeah.
That's where I got fully delivered from some demons, dog. You guys don't know. Hey, I was saved.
Yeah.
I was saved, but I still had demons in me that I allowed to be in there. It's not that I was possessed, but I had demons that I opened the door to them, and so I needed to be freed from these things. And so, you know, we were getting together and we were talking and sharing, you know, stuff. And Lewis, even he was reading his word, and as he was doing his job, he was telling us stories about, man, I'm talking to this guy, and I'm giving him the word, and you know, we're just kind of like we're it's iron sharpen iron, iron sharpens iron, and that's what we're doing to each other. We're sharpening each other's swords. And so, you know, we're sharpening each other, and we're going through this, and I say, all right, Dad, I need to get these guys together. So we start, us three, me, him, and Lewis, and we start to start this men's group, and, you know, we're just doing it, and it's God's moving. We start praying for people, you know, and God is just moving, and men are crying, and you know, we're literally starting at about 7:00, staying there till like midnight, 1:00, because we just
in the freezing cold. That's
in
how
the freezing cold.
Like,
we have a fire pit going, and we're just like, God's doing something. Friday night, and we don't have nothing to do Saturday, so
it was so good.
And so, you know, that happens, and then, you know, fast forward to, you know, I'm living in Wilmington with my wife, and I'm in the shower, and at this time I'm really seeking God. I'm really seeking his face and just wanting a relationship with him. And so I'm saying, God, I need you to speak to me. And I'm opening my Bible, and every single scripture that I read, God is speaking directly towards me, like to me, for what I'm going through. And so, you know, God's moving, and so I'm in the shower one day. God loves to speak to us when we're on the toilet or we're on the shower, in the restroom.
He's been saying that, bro. This is not nothing new, bro. He's been saying this since he got saved, bro. God keeps speaking to me in the shower, bro.
Or on the toilet, dog. So
all the time, bro.
So one day I'm in the shower, and God gives me a vision. Like I'm in the shower, so I ain't asleep. God gives me a vision. And God shows me a spot like this where we're at here, and it's long and wide, and he shows me 10 barber chairs, 10 barber chairs, and he shows it's full of barbers and full of appointments. Everybody's cutting hair, and I'm sitting on this side of the wall, and I'm in the first barber chair, and so God's showing me this vision, and he shows me in the fifth chair on that side, there's a guy cutting hair, and he finishes his haircut, and the guy stands up, and the barber says, hey, this guy needs prayer. And so all the barbers stop what they're doing. We get around this guy, and we begin to pray for this dude.
Right. Wow. Yeah.
And so God gave me that vision, and I said, God, like, if this is you, then you're going to give me the scripture for it. Yeah. And God, the scripture that literally pops in my head, Romans 12. Romans 12, and it talks about do not conform to the things or the patterns of this world, to be different, right? And so I knew it was God. I started crying, bro. I started crying in the shower because I knew it was God. Yeah. And I knew, man, God, this scripture says, do not conform to the patterns of this world. Don't be like the world. And everybody looks at barber shops and looks at barbers as they drink and they party. And in reality, that's what barbers are portrayed as. They party and they drink and they do coke and do these crazy things, party outside, go to the clubs, all this stuff, right? People portray barbers as that. And God said, I'm calling you to be different. And I said, wow. And I was crying in the shower, and I'm yelling, babe, come here. You don't understand what God just showed me. And she's not understanding because my wife didn't grow up in church like I did. So she doesn't understand, like, now she does. She's been in it long enough. But, I don't think she really understand what God was doing in me.
Right.
And so, I'm sharing everything with her, and she's like, "What the heck?" Like tripping out. And she, at some point, she's saying, "Dude, I want that too. I want that too. I want what you, Vic, and Lewis have. Like, I want a group of girls that I can get with." And I say, "Do it with Lewis's wife, Michelle, and let's hang out with Fatima, get her back to church."
That's right.
And so, but I'm like, man, she's like tripping out on everything that's happening, and so, I say, okay, God, this is you. And I remember sharing this. I think we had a event at church, and this is when Alvin and his wife first started going to church.
Yep.
And I cut Alvin's hair at OBL.
Yeah.
And when he lived over there, so I knew Alvin before he even started coming to our church.
Crazy.
And so when he came to his church, I knew, okay, God, what the heck are you doing?
Right.
So I remember we're at this event. I think it's a couples event we're having at church. And I'm sharing with him the vision that God gave me for the barbershop. He's like, man, you got to do it. You got to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I was on fire. I'm on fire. And so, time passes, and I'm like, man, I don't know if I'm going to do this. Like, I feel like, I remember Alvin, like, he'll be like, what's up with, are you going to open the shop or what? And I'm like, dang, yeah, I'm going to do it. And I'm like, kind of like, dang. And so I believe that fear starts to creep inside of me.
Yeah, like doubt, right?
Doubt to open it, because I said, if I open it, it could fail.
Right.
And that I am not good with failure.
Yeah.
Like, I can't do it. I can't do failure. And so, my dad one day is driving by, going to church. Right here, we exit Redondo Beach and go to Normandy, and church is right there. And he sees this spot. He sees this spot vacant. So he calls, and he's like, hey, my son wants to open a barbershop. And, I was wondering if you guys were willing to do that here. And the owner, or the guy, was like, nah, we don't want no barbershop. And so my dad was like, all right. So 5 or 6 months pass, and my dad's driving by again, and he says, I'm going to call back. And I needed my dad to do that, because I would have never done it.
Yeah.
Right.
His faith.
Right. His faith.
Kind of pushing you.
Yeah. He pushed me into my destiny.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so my dad says, I got to call back. So he calls back, and he says, hey, I called a couple months ago talking about a barbershop, and the guy says, oh, Pastor Ruben, right? Yeah. My son, he was like, oh yeah, I talked to the owners, and they're willing to open a barbershop just as long as they don't do women's hair. And he said, no, they don't do women's hair. We just do men's, because there's a salon down the way.
Yeah.
And so they do women's hair, so we can't do women's hair, so we just do men's hair. And so he's like, yeah, so we're willing to do it. And so that night that my dad calls, I don't know what's going on at this moment. My dad just shares with me there's this spot, and blah, blah, blah. He doesn't tell me he called and the guy's like willing to do it. And so I go home, and my dad, he tells me, hey, we're going to go on Monday. This is like on a Wednesday. We're going to go on Monday, and we're going to go sign the papers for the spot. And I say, what the freaking heck? I'm like, how am I going to tell Andrew that I'm leaving?
Yeah.
I've been with them for 7 years. How am I going to do this? And I'm not good. Like, if somebody pushes me into confrontation, I'll be in confrontation. But I'm not good going up to somebody and saying, hey, this and that, because I don't want the confrontation. I don't think any of us do. Yeah. So, whatever. So, I end up having, Andrew finds out, and he's like, yo, like, I heard you're doing this, and I'm like, yeah, man, I'm just trying to better my family and do what's best for us. And so, I'm gonna do it. And he's like, all right, yeah, man, he's supportive of it. We had, ups and downs, but, he was supportive of me making this move. And he said, if I needed anything, that he's there. So, I appreciate him for that. But, I ended up coming over here, and when I looked through the windows of this place, this was the place that God showed me in my vision. So I knew that it was God.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And I knew the way that it is now, that's what God showed me. And so, we sign the papers, and we do this thing, man. And Drew, he worked with me at the other shop too. And, our relationship through faith brought us together. And, he decided to come with me because he needed that, that different lifestyle, that different group. And so, you know, he comes with me and I share with him my vision for this barbershop, and he's 100% on board. And so, you know, we come and we start, this, and we start, you know, the floor starts getting done, the walls start getting painted, the ceiling gets painted, and we're doing this, man. And me and my dad and Drew and all these guys, you know, they helped us build this stuff, and it's starting to come to fruition. It's not done yet, but this is just the beginning,
right?
And this is where God brought me, right? So from me truly giving myself to Him at the age of 28, I'm gonna be 30. I'm gonna be 30 in November. Within 2 years, God, look at what God has done.
2 years.
He said, because you're obedient, son,
yeah.
I'm gonna give you something that you can manage, right? And I believe that God would have never gave me this if I couldn't manage it,
right?
And so I believe that, you know, this place is not just for people to come get their haircuts. This place is for people to come get saved. And I think it's sometimes we think, man, we got to send everybody to church, but not everybody goes to church.
Right.
There's people that walk in this place that never step foot in a church in their lives that are giving their lives to Christ here.
Yeah.
And, you know, we could say for F Baby, one of his clients, you know, never stepped foot in a church. You know, things happen in his life, and we were praying, and F Baby's like, this guy needs prayer, and we go and we pray for this dude, and Drew walks him through the call to salvation and gets this guy saved, and this guy gives his life to Christ, asking him, do you want to give your life to Christ? And he says yes. And this is the vision that God gave me, and I believe that thousands of people are going to walk in this place and walk out saved. Yeah. And it has nothing to do with get a haircut, right? It has to do with God ordained this, so I know he's gonna fulfill his promise. Right. And so I believe that, you know, this place, Your Way Barbershop, that's why I call it Your Way Barbershop. Right. Because I said, God, I need what's the name? What's the name that I need to have for this barbershop? Yeah. And at first I was dabbling with Yahweh Barbershop. But then I started thinking, okay, if somebody that sees that they know what it means, they're like, oh, I'm not gonna go in there because it's right. So I started dabbling with that, and my wife was like, Yahweh, and you know, Mexicans, they were like, Yahweh. So I was like, I can't call it that because these folks are gonna make fun of it. And so I ended up, God gave me Your Way, and the reason why I called it Your Way is because I told God, I'm gonna call this place Your Way because it's not my way, God. It's Your way. Yeah. And it has, and people could come in here and say, oh, you know, that's Your Way Barbershop where you're going to get your haircut your way. Yeah. But you're going to come in here and get your haircut your way, but you're going to leave with a different experience. Right, right. And God's going to touch people's hearts in here. Yeah. And I believe that He's already doing it. Every single customer that comes in this place, man, it's incredible how many people that will open up conversation about who Christ is, or you know, their issues that they're dealing with, and God, you know, Drew is really good. He's an evangelist. That's what his calling is evangelism. That's right. And I believe that, you know, he talks to most people about Christ in here. He's the main one. And so, you know, I just believe that that's what we're called to do here. Yeah. And it has nothing to do with giving a haircut. I believe that obviously we want to be a great barbershop and for people to want to come back and get good haircuts. That's what's going to bring them in here. Right. Sure. But the main focus is, do they know Christ? Right. And getting them saved. Yeah. And so, yeah, man, that's my testimony. And, you know, I'm at the point that I'm at now, you know, I don't mess around in nothing. You know, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do nothing because I know what it can do for me. Right. Or do to me. And so, you know, I don't the born again experience. Yeah, I had a straight up born again experience, and you know, I'm on fire for God, bro. That's right. Like I'm not I'll never leave Him. Right. You know, I may go through my trials, may struggle a little bit, but I know that God is real. You knew of Him, but now you know Him. Yeah, but nobody could tell me He's not real. Right. I don't care what scientific facts you want to come with, whatever you want to come with. I know God revealed Himself to me. Yeah, absolutely. You can't tell me that experience was not real. Yeah. And so you could say, oh, you grew up in church and blah, 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 but there's people out there that didn't grow up in church,
Right.
that come to him because of the experience,
Right.
you know. And so I just believe that, you know, through my testimony, I hope people's lives are touched, because just like I was through that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That guy's testimony,
Which is crazy.
and so, you know, I thank God that He did that for me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, He brought me through. You know, sometimes, you know, we want to, you know, like, oh, the devil did this to me, right? But sometimes we put ourselves through
For sure.
Yeah,
through some
absolutely.
stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so I believe I put myself through some stuff, but God brought me out.
Yeah.
And He took me through the valley.
Yeah.
He didn't leave me there. And so He brought me to where I am now, a business owner,
Mm-hmm.
you know, loving God, a beautiful family, my wife and my daughter, about another one on the way.
That's right.
And so I believe that God is blessing me, not because I'm special, but because He said, son, I can trust you with this.
Yeah.
And I believe that once we earn God's trust, right? That once we start managing ourselves right, then He's going to bless us even more.
Yeah.
Because He can't bless mess.
Yeah.
100%.
And so, you know, that's my testimony, man. I
Yeah.
don't know if you guys got questions or how long we've been going. 2 hours? Damn, we've been going for a
That's
minute.
long.
But yeah, I know my testimony is probably everywhere. But
Yeah, that's good though.
You
It was good. I think for the people who are gonna hear it, I feel like that's what somebody needs to hear, you know. And I feel like no matter what, you may be over everywhere, but that might just be the part that somebody hears and
Absolutely.
you know, it touches them. So
And I think it's so amazing how like it wasn't something like boom, like something so crazy. It was
Yeah.
just literally just super simple.
right,
So
and it,
God
simple
just
to the
just-
point.
all it was me hearing somebody else's testimony.
right, somebody, you know,
it,
that's
bro.
what we do. We're called to be witnesses, right?
Right. But I think
you know what's so crazy though. Trip out on this. A witness sees, right?
Right.
That's where they can testify, right? But a false witness is, I heard so and
Right.
so, but did you see? You know what I'm saying? And it's like we're witnesses of what He's done,
right.
you know?
And so I think that like I think this is what blew my mind the most about my story, is that it had nothing to do with it had to do with this guy telling me this, but I think God showed me the way that He made the way.
Right.
Right? So if this guy would have said no to Christ, then that testimony would have never reached me.
Right.
So God had to do it in Him
Right.
first,
Yeah.
for it to come to me.
Yeah.
So look at how God lines things up for me to get truly saved, for Him to come into my life, and for me to bring Him here,
Right.
and to bring Him to CWC. Like
Right.
that's how God works. He's just using us as those dots. You know those pictures you draw with
Yeah.
the dots 1, 2, 3,
That's
and you
right.
connect the
Connecting
dots.
everybody.
That's how He uses us as humans. He says,
Yeah.
"All right, I'm changing your life now." You're going to tell your testimony to this guy, and he's going to get saved. And then you go to this guy, he gets saved, blah, blah, blah. And God
Yeah.
works like that, and it comes to me. And I'm just one of the dots in the picture.
Yeah. That's all we all are.
And so
We all
my
are.
dot
Right.
connected his dot, your
Right.
dot, right? And so that's where God really blew my mind. I think that's
Yeah.
where He blew my mind.
Yeah.
Was that, okay, God doesn't work in ways that we understand.
Right.
He's like, I didn't even know this guy, and what God was doing with him
Right.
in his life. I never met him, never knew him ever in my life, but what God was doing in his life was going to
Yeah.
connect to me.
Yeah.
It's crazy, bro.
Think about how impactful that is.
Yeah,
man.
bro. He used him so that He can get to you. You know, it's
Right.
crazy.
So God already had it planned
Right.
out from the beginning.
Right.
He had it. He was
That's
like, I'm gonna get this dude. I'm gonna get this dude.
That's
At
it.
28 years old, I'm gonna get him.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, man, I think that was the most powerful thing for me.
Yeah.
And so we all gotta look. If you're a believer out there and you have a testimony and it's somebody, it's not a maybe you have a testimony where God revealed Himself to you, like specifically. Maybe you're the start to the dotted picture,
Yeah.
right? And so I believe that I was just in the picture.
Yeah.
I didn't start it. God just revealed Himself
Yeah.
to me through this man
Yeah.
and what He did in his life. And so, Yeah, I mean,
That's good. I mean, that was a. I'm sure it's gonna do the same again.
I hope so.
Somebody
I hope
else,
so.
But next week,
Yes, sir.
who we got up next? Who's on the hot seat next?
Drew Lope.
Drew
I'm up
Love.
next, bro.
You ain't ever gonna see.
Crazy.
You know, it's crazy because his testimony, he's talking about how, the dots connecting to you. Now you're gonna say the dots connecting to him.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Which is crazy. He's like, you could make a movie out of people's lives.
Right.
So
And
nuts.
yeah,
You
because
know?
we literally we knew each other,
Right.
but we never connected really.
Right.
And Drew Lope didn't grow up in church, right?
I
He
didn't
didn't
at
grow
all.
up in church.
Yeah.
And so he's going to tell his testimony, but, him going to the barbershop over there was like God ordained. Like he needed to do that.
Right.
He could even tell you that he wasn't planning on moving.
They'll
And-
hear all that on the next episode.
yeah, they'll hear all
We'll
that, but
hear that next week. Stay
it was
tuned.
God ordained because it connected us.
It's
right?
just crazy. It's the
And
dots
so
thing.
and
Right.
and it connected us to the point where now, God revealed your calling to you, and he could share all that in the next
Yeah.
episode. But it's
Well,
just
coming
crazy
soon next week.
how if he would have said no to the job there, then he wouldn't be right here right now.
Yeah, at the same time, but if you would have said no or you didn't
Right,
hear
if
it,
I didn't-
this guy wouldn't be here right
exactly.
now. You see
And
what
so
I'm saying?
if that guy would have never said yes to God,
Right.
I wouldn't be here.
That's what I'm saying.
So
So,
that,
like,
and if
it's crazy.
if the old lady and the cholo dude that told him you need to get back to God didn't obey God, then where would he be?
you gotta have some faith in there.
God, we connected dots, dog.
Only God, bro. Like,
Only God, perfect
crazy,
timing.
bro.
You can never miss God.
Heck no, man.
You know,
That's nuts.
I feel like when God's really gonna speak to you, He's gonna speak to you.
For sure.
You know,
And I think we could even that could be a prayer for even our unsaved family or unsaved friends. God, just reveal yourself to them.
Yeah.
It doesn't even have to be through them freaking getting the gospel. Just
Yeah.
I would say, God, connect the dots to them.
connect the dots.
yeah, that's it.
Through
Connect the
anybody.
simple.
Through anybody. Use anybody.
Yeah,
Right, connect the dots to them, Lord.
Wow.
that's it.
But
Crazy.
yeah, so next week
Next week,
we'll do Drew Loke's testimony
Yes, sir.
and hear
Can't wait to
his
hear it.
story.
can't wait to hear
I
it.
don't know his story fully, so I'm excited to hear it.
That's right.
But
Excited.
we'll probably have
Stay
questions and
tuned,
stuff.
stay
Stay
tuned
tuned for
sure.
next
It's gonna be
week.
crazy.
It's gonna be crazy.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
excited
But
and
for sure, I
We're
appreciate
excited.
everyone watching for sure.
yeah, that was good. I mean, this
Sus-
testimony was
subscribe
great.
button.
Subscribe
Make
and,
sure you
and
sub.
follow us, man, on
Sub,
Instagram.
Insta,
Shop
subscribe.
Talk
Make sure you hit a
podcast.
like. That's what we
Like,
said.
subscribe,
Like it
all
all.
that.
Drop
Comment.
any comments for
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
drop comments and let us know.
Questions.
Yeah, questions, whatever you got.
Matter of fact, if you have any questions about Jay's testimony, hey, drop them in the comments
Yeah.
below, and I'm sure he'll answer them
We
for
could probably
you.
do like a Q&A, if anything, if anybody has questions.
We could do it if they drop questions
Right.
next week before we get open up to Drew's testimony.
Yeah.
We can answer those questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, we
Yes, we
love
do.
everybody. We love you guys.
For sure.
We love
And
you
so
guys.
we
for
hope
sure.
to see you guys next week.
For sure.
We'll see you guys later.